Utilities' climate pledges exposed as greenwashing. Most U.S. utilities now advertise climate commitments, but the Dirty Truth Report 2025 finds that these pledges rarely translate into action. Of the 75 utilities analyzed, 65 had public climate goals, yet more than half still earned an F grade. Only 3 utilities received an A. Pledges without progress. Despite the prevalence of climate targets, the report shows that most commitments amount to little more than greenwashing. Utilities often set distant net zero deadlines, such as 2045 or 2050, without actionable interim plans. The report emphasizes that only companies with ambitious near-term goals, like cutting emissions 80% by 2030, demonstrated measurable progress. For example, Xcel Energy has maintained its 2018 pledge to reduce emissions 80% by 2030 from a 2005 baseline. Backed by tangible clean energy investments, the utility earned a B rating this year, outperforming peers with weaker or shifting commitments. Backtracking on targets. The most alarming trend is utilities rolling back prior commitments. Energy delayed its goal of reaching 50% carbon-free capacity by 2030, pushing it to an undefined later date. Evergy eliminated its 2021 goal to reduce emissions 70% by 2030 and instead expanded plans for 5,500 megawatts of new gas capacity by 2035. Duke Energy Carolinas in progress worked to remove North Carolina's interim 2030 emissions reduction target altogether. American Electric Power, AEP, deleted its interim A 2030 goal from its sustainability report and weakened its net zero framing. Arizona Public Service, APS, went further, abandoning all pre-2050 commitments, including its 65% clean energy by 2030 target. Such reversals reflect what the report describes as a failure to make realistic plans years ago to meet their own goals. Instead of building momentum, these companies cite timing and cost as excuses. How the report measured greenwashing. The Sierra Club's methodology is rooted in climate science benchmarks and hard data on utility planning. Coal retirements. Full credit only if coal is retired by 2030, consistent with IPCC and IEA guidance for limiting warming below 1.5 degrees. No new gas. Utilities lose points for planning new gas plants through 2035. Clean energy build-out. Points are awarded for wind and solar additions sufficient to both replace coal gas and meet forecasted load growth to 2035. Data sources included S&P Global Market Intelligence for coal gas ownership and generation, Integrated Resource Plans, IRPs, corporate announcements, and S&P Global project lists for planned wind solar. Utility load forecasts, 2024 to 2035, supplemented with NERC regional data where missing and adjusted for line losses. NREL state-level capacity factors to calculate clean energy generation. Grading scale 5 equals A, 50 to 74 equals B, 35 to 49 C, 7.5 to 34 equals D, 17.5 equals F. The national aggregate score in 2025 was 15/100ths, a failing grade. This framework reveals that utilities with ambitious interim targets, such as 80% GHG reduction by 2030, consistently scored higher than peers leaning on vague 2045 to 2050 net zero claims. Consumer and investor impact. These shifts have implications beyond climate. Greenwashing can mislead investors seeking credible ESG performance and leave ratepayers exposed to rising costs. Energy Innovation estimates that reduced clean energy deployment could raise U.S. wholesale power prices by 50% by 2035. In states like Kansas and Missouri, where Evergy operates, low-income and minority households already face some of the nation's highest energy burdens. Delays in coal retirements and new investments in gas could lock in higher bills for decades. Why accountability matters. The Sierra Club's analysis underscores that vague pledges are not enough. Utilities that commit to near-term, science-aligned targets, such as Xcel's 80% by 2030, score substantially higher than those without concrete milestones. You've been listening to Sustainability Soundbites presented by E+E Leader. For partnership opportunities, reach out to a member of our team.